Hi everyone, thanks for watching. Most of the content on my channel is supported by generous patrons, but made available for free to the entire world. If you support that, please consider adding your support at patreon.com/atheistdebates. This clip, however, is from one of the mini programs that I do on YouTube on The Line. And if you liked it, feel free to visit, like, subscribe, and watch The Line Network live. Thank you. Olivia is calling from Arizona, pronouns she, her. Olivia's a deist, recognizes that they don't necessarily have a good argument for it, but wanted to talk to atheists and skeptics and get some perspective. So, Olivia, welcome. You are on with Shannon Q and maybe me.
Hi, yeah. Well, I sure hope I get to hear from you, Matt, because you're part of the reason I called today.
Yay, I matter.
You do.
Anyway, how can we help?
Yeah, so, well, like I said on there, I'm a deist. I wasn't sure how you guys have preferred me to put down. I used to put down theist when I called in, but I'm not really part of any organized religion. I just have spiritual beliefs. And you mentioned earlier in the call that you wanted to have people in my situation call in. So I guess the thing that always kind of is difficult for me to figure out motivates atheists and skeptics is a very important thing to me in life is feeling like I am constantly learning for something that's going to come after I die. And that gives me a lot of hope in the world to think that there is something else past all this, even though I have no evidence of that. I can't prove it, but to feel like there is something that that this isn't just it. It's not just the neurons in my brain are going to go dead one day and then that's it. I'm going to disappear forever. So the idea of the soul is very comforting to me. I guess you could say it's a crutch or it's a coping mechanism, but it's very important to me for my own mental health in general. So I'm curious how you guys sort of come to terms with the fact that you're going to inevitably die, and in your worldview, that's just it. You're just going to be gone forever.
We're different people, so I think we're going to have different answers. I'll let Matt go first because I never shut up. Let me mute myself.
I'm probably really weird. I definitely believed in a soul. I believed in an afterlife. I was a fundamentalist Southern Baptist Christian. But when I figured out that I didn't have good reason to believe it, I didn't have any of the crises that some of my other former Christians have. And so I didn't, to me, I've described it before as it's as if somebody told me I was going to inherit $1 billion on my 30th birthday. And then I get close to my 30th birthday and I find out, oh, that's not true. I could spend the rest of my life lamenting the fact that I didn't get $1 billion and being mad about it and being upset. I don't work that way. And I'm very kind of pragmatic. As soon as I figured out, oh, this isn't true, I'm a little pissed off that somebody, misled me, but they were well-intentioned too, and they genuinely thought it was true. So I'm not mad at them. But it's very much there doesn't appear to be anything I can do about it. And when we talk about something like a soul, to me, there are a number of positions in various religions that are untestable, unfalsifiable, and yet they might be comforting, but there's no way to show that they're real. In this case, I think there's ways to show that the soul does not exist and probably cannot exist, at least as described in that sense. And so the notion of an afterlife that I would experience seems not just not demonstrably true, but demonstrably not true, or at least as close as we can get to it. And so I don't experience any existential dread or depression or anything about that, because I feel, instead of feeling like I've lost something, I feel like I've gained something, because instead of being tied to something, a claim that is at least not demonstrably true and possibly demonstrably not true, to borrow from Aaron, it's freeing. Like, I'm not stuck with a delusion. I'm not stuck with misinformation. Now I get to explore the world and say, okay, how should I live this one life that I know I'm going to get? And if there is an afterlife, isn't it just a bonus anyway? And until somebody gives me some way that I can do something about a potential afterlife, not my problem. I got better shit to do than worry about an afterlife that may or may not exist. So I just kind of keep going.
My answer is going to be a bit different, but probably along a similar vein. So the soul was the thing that fell apart for me probably first because I studied neuroscience, and once you get down to the finite level, there's a lot of problems that really couldn't be answered for me when it comes to the soul, just knowing from neuroscience. And I won't get into that right now. And actually, this will probably help explain some of it. I was about to apologize because it takes me a bit to search for words now. One of the reasons I've been away from the show for a while, amongst a myriad of reasons, is I have multiple sclerosis and I have new lesions in my thalamus and my frontal cortex. I used to be able to effortlessly find a word, and now I kind of have to search for words when I'm speaking more so than I used to. So my apologies for that, but that kind of factors into the way that, my brain has had something happen to it that impacts, who I am and how I think. And that's one of the reasons that the soul fell apart for me. So once I was disabused of that and I just couldn't believe it anymore, even though I wanted to, I did want to believe it because, like you said, it was comforting. I liked the idea then, and I'm going to tell you why I don't even like it now. And I'm glad that I was disabused of it. I'll see my loved ones later, and I'll continue on. I didn't have to deal with my mortality in the same way when I was oriented in that manner towards what reality was when it came to like my longevity as an entity. Once I realized that wasn't the case, that my neurons, the sodium ion channels shut down, my neurons die, and that's the end of me as far as I'm concerned. I had to do some real deep thinking about, okay, well, what does it mean to orient myself towards, now towards my real life, as opposed to orienting myself towards a hypothetical, afterlife that I'm uncertain of. And I realized, and this is what made me happy ultimately, that having an orientation towards a hypothetical that I'm uncertain of in the distant future was changing the way that I lived my life in a way that did not serve me. It didn't serve me. I was making decisions based on a hierarchical structure that was not in the foundation of reality. And as a result, I was in this type of crisis, fearing my death and oriented towards evading my death instead of grappling with the reality of my ultimate death, and instead having the locus of focus be what I have and I know is tangible. And once I reoriented my focus on investing in myself, in the reality that I know for certain I have and is tangible, I started making better decisions and coping better as a result, because I was no longer afraid of that future or trying to evade the inevitability of that future. I was actually working through and doing the emotional work to accept the reality of that future. Now, if you put me and you side by side, let's just say that there is some, because you said you're a deist. Let's just say that there is an afterlife. Let's say, just for the sake of this argument, let's just say that there is. Both of us end up there in your belief system, but I'm less worried about it than you are. And I'm more focused on the now and not constantly grappling with the fear of that, because I've already done the emotional work to figure out what that means for me if it's not real, which I think is the better emotional strategy. At least it was for me. I can't tell you what the good strategy is for you, but that was the best strategy for me. And I was better for it. I no longer fear it. I know it's an inevitability. And I don't know what happens after. Speculating on what might happen after or might not happen after doesn't serve me. So that's my answer.
Okay.
Thoughts?
Okay. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, no, I was just throwing it back to you. I want to hear what your thoughts are.
Okay. Yeah. So, all right. I've been sitting here really trying to take in what you both are saying, and I think I have a pretty good idea of like what's motivating you two. But I do want to clarify real quick to make sure I understand. I see. I think I see a little bit of through line for both of your reasons for it. I'd like
Okay.
you to clarify if I'm off base here, but it seems like both of your definitions for why. Well, the key difference I think between how you two look at it and the way I look at it is you see it as freeing because you feel that an afterlife existing would give you some form of like moral imperative to take action in this life. Am I understanding
No,
that right?
I don't
no,
think I said anything even in the ballpark of that.
no. It has nothing. I didn't engage in the concept of morality and all, and I don't think that matters. So it did. Sorry, it has nothing
But
to
it doesn't have to
do with.
be a moral
It's
imperative.
really no. It's really strange to me that we went and don't. I'm not trying to be a dick. I'm not trying to beat you up. I genuinely like you talked about this being important for your mental health. I would like to understand that, but we talked about from a practical standpoint where we both are, and what you just said. If I were to paraphrase it, was you think we feel freed from having to consider the moral responsibilities of our actions because we're not worried about where we're going to end up. And neither of us mentioned anything at all about that. It's not even a factor. I only care about what's true, not what's convenient.
Yeah, and
Okay.
I care about what's true and slightly different. It's I think you're focusing a bit on what I had to say, which was once I oriented myself towards the reality that my life would end and that would be it, then I was starting to approach my life, my philosophy on my life differently. And this is the most important part. I had to grapple with my mortality in a very tangible, real way. Instead of saying, okay, well, I don't really need to grapple with my mortality because there's going to be something after. And I existed in a Christian infrastructure, so I was orienting myself towards an afterlife and making decisions based in that infrastructure. It's going to be different for everybody, but that was the infrastructure that I was operating within. So that's what I was speaking about, is like I was making decisions based on trying to reach that goal of being in the afterlife, even if those decisions didn't serve me. Moral, immoral, amoral, whatever. Even if they didn't serve me, weren't good for me, or weren't good for others, I was making those decisions sometimes against my better judgment and against, you know, my own thoughts and orientation on how I should act, because I was trying to achieve that goal instead of being oriented towards achieving the goals of serving myself, my community, my family, my friends, the world in reality in this life. And I was better at doing that once I disabused myself of the idea of an afterlife, grappling with my mortality as a reality was better for my mental health. And then I was able to, make better decisions, arguably, and I think objectively better decisions for myself and everyone around me. Does that clarify a bit?
Yeah, I think a little bit. I still am not totally sure. I want to address what you had to say, Matt, but I'm going to put a pin on that first because I want to clarify something with Shannon here. So, Shannon, you said that. So would you say that the issue you take with the idea of there being an afterlife is that it would change how you act now, though, or is it just like because of it not being true, like what Matt said?
So I'm going to address this from two directions, I think. Because first I have to deal with the reality that my concept of the afterlife when I had one was specifically the Christian one, right? So orienting myself towards that is what I was speaking to. Let's take that out of it. Let's just say there's just this generic, ubiquitous potential afterlife, right? Let's just remove Christianity from it entirely. What I was saying is that and I'll go back to the you and I side by side. You and I are side by side. If there's an afterlife, period, that everybody gets to go to regardless, right? Like you don't have to do anything special to get into it. It's just, it's just part of being an entity is you have a corporeal form, you die, and then there's an afterlife. Let's operate on that hypothetical. Nobody knows what it is. We just assume it's there. Assuming that it's there doesn't help me grapple with the reality of my mortality in this life. If anything, it helps me avoid grappling with that reality. And
Okay.
I don't think that avoidance was serving me specifically. And I'm not sure it serves anyone, because if you have dissonance or emotional conflict relating to something in your life that is an inevitability, 100% objectively an inevitability, figuring out how to grapple with that as a reality is, I think, objectively better. Assuming that there's an extra level to existence that there is no way to know is real. And I would argue there are ways to know that it isn't real, because I don't think that the soul is even possible for myriad reasons. That does not help me grapple with that reality. It orients me towards a coping mechanism instead of that it is arguably, I think, not real, and there's no way to know if it is. Like I would hope say, there's no way I can know that it is. It can be comforting. I can like the idea of it, but I can't know that it's a certainty. A comforting uncertainty doesn't help me grapple with and contend with and mitigate my emotions towards an inevitability that is an absolute certainty. So I like the strategy of grappling with the inevitability that's an absolute certainty better than assuaging that emotional conflict by a hypothetical that feels comforting but doesn't address the actual root of where that emotional conflict is sourced.
Okay. And so this is really interesting to me, because everything you said just now makes a lot of sense. And I completely agree with you 100% about how it doesn't really matter whether there is an afterlife or not. In your case,
Mhm.
because you're going to be dead if there is, or you'll be there if there is one, and then if there isn't one, then it doesn't matter. But for me, that looking at it from that perspective is really terrifying, and the opposite is
Why?
comforting to think that it can be that I can expect there to be something, and then if there isn't, it doesn't matter because I'm dead and I won't know. I won't care anyway.
So why is that comforting? It's comforting for you because you don't like the idea of the inevitability of your mortality.
Because it makes me feel, if I try and go through life with the notion that this is all I get and I'm never going to have anything else, this could sound really like weird and lazy, but it makes me feel like I have to make more of a difference in the world versus just doing what I prefer to do. Not to say like I don't like, I go to protests and stuff and take part in activism, but I feel like it would put a lot more pressure. I would put a lot more pressure on myself if I felt like this is all I get. This is the only life I get to live. But if I have an endless afterlife, then I can live whatever the heck I want.
So, okay, that's interesting. I think we're getting to something, because it tells me that one of the reasons that it's comforting for you is not even just the idea of your mortality, like life ending being scary. It's because it means that this is the reality that this is the only life you get increases its value, makes it more important, and that means that you would have to have a different orientation towards it. And not necessarily, by the way, I don't think that means that you should put that kind of pressure on yourself. These are the types of things that I had to explore, right? I had similar
Right.
thoughts, not identical, but similar thoughts. And I had to figure that out. The idea of the afterlife, I realized was an excuse for avoidance in many ways of things that I needed to and should contend with in order to be the best version of myself for myself and everybody else around me. And there might be an answer to that question for you that you're not exploring because the question is scary. You're assuming the answer is that you need to do more or that you're not providing enough value. You're assuming that's the answer, but you're able to avoid it because you're like, okay, well, I'm just going to exist forever anyway. So, I don't have to worry about that because I'll have forever. But I would even arguably, if you have forever, do you think that forever allows you to interact with this reality? And if not, why isn't that still a valuable question?
Well, that's a really good point. I guess the way I look at it is whether I can interact with this reality or not doesn't necessarily matter.
Well, does this reality matter?
I would deal with the tools that I get in the afterlife.
So you're willing to just disregard absolutely everything about this reality, and it ultimately doesn't matter just because maybe there's an afterlife?
Well, no, I recognize that I'm here and now, and I use the tools I have now to impact now.
Okay. How much better are you at working in the reality you experience if you're worried about an afterlife that might or might not exist than if you're not?
I don't worry about the afterlife. I just think that's going to be the thing that comes later.
Is there just one afterlife that everybody gets in your view?
Well, I'm not going to have a very satisfying answer. My answer is I don't know. But
okay,
it's just
possible? Is it possible that there are good afterlives and bad afterlives available to you?
Maybe. It could be. I would hope there isn't.
Good question.
I would hope it's just equal.
So going back to touch on my thing real quick to tie this together. When I was a Christian, how I acted had no bearing on my afterlife. My particular view of Christianity, which is fairly typical, is that you're either saved or you're not. You're either forgiven or you're not. You're either going to the good afterlife or you're not, based entirely on the grace of God and nothing that you do. God grants you the grace by which you exercise the faith to be a redeemed person, and you'll either go to the afterlife or not. So morality was irrelevant for anything other than living the right life to reflect the glory of God. And this came about, well, in my Father's house there are many mansions and they're not all the same. And so your rewards in the afterlife were going to be based more about, did you serve? Did you, teach? Did you allow the Holy Spirit to work? Did you, reflect a morally upstanding life? But the disposition of your soul about whether you were going to heaven or hell had nothing to do with your moral actions. You could be a mass murderer and go to heaven. You could be nearly righteous and potentially go to hell if you weren't chosen, if you hadn't taken that step. Once I changed my view of morality to value morality as a primary consideration, that change happened whether there's an afterlife or not. I changed my view about morality, whether there is an afterlife or not, because I recognize that the life we're experiencing now is the only one I know for sure exists. And every second I spend worrying about some other afterlife that I don't have any way to do anything about is a second wasted. And if in fact we have a limited time, why would I want to waste it on that? And not just a matter of why would I want to. There's no path to, nobody's been able to show a path by which I can reach the right answer or even know if there is a right answer. So my rejection of an afterlife, my acceptance of an afterlife, if it were to happen right now, is about whether or not there's good reason to think it's true. It's completely separate from morality. And for me, as a Southern Baptist fundamentalist Christian, It always was completely separate from morality. As a matter of fact, the I go to church on Easter and Sunday quasi fake wishy-washy Christians who had in their head, I hope I'm good enough to get to heaven, had never read their fucking Bible, did not know doctrine, and were actually engaged in an act of blasphemy that the devil was leading them straight to hell. So if there's an afterlife is one question. I don't know how to address that. I don't see any reason why it could even possibly be true. And I see many reasons why it can't be. But if there is one, then the next one is, what do I need to do in my life to determine what sort of afterlife I'm going to have, or is it just one for everybody? And if I don't have a path to even find answers to those, they become non-issues. It's like asking me why I'm not out looking for Bigfoot right now. I have no reason to think there is a Bigfoot. I have no reason to think that I would know anything at all about where and how to search to find one. So why waste my time?
Yeah.
So would you say, oh, sorry.
Yeah, no, go ahead. I was just going to say something super fast, believe it or not. I'm capable of that sometimes. Like my orientation towards it is, even if it is true, I don't think it is, for the record. I don't even think it's possible. But even if it is true, it's a useless concept psychologically. It's an ineffective and sometimes detrimental idea. And thus, I don't engage with it because I have no way of knowing. And even if it is true, it doesn't fucking matter. And sometimes can change the way people make decisions because it's an escape hatch. And I don't think escape hatches are emotionally, psychologically healthy.
So, okay, let me ask you about this then. What would you say to a person that just says that, like, if they are, okay, let's say I was totally on board with just giving up on the afterlife thing entirely, but that just makes my life more difficult and I'm more depressed because of it, because I feel like there's less to my existence now.
Seculartherapy.org.
Beneficial to me in the end?
Yeah, what Matt said, seculartherapy.org. And I would also say, what if I was an alcoholic and that helped me escape the things I need to grapple with? And if I stopped drinking, then I would need to grapple with them. Would you tell me to stop drinking? Yeah, you would probably, because I'm doing it to escape. I'm doing it to avoid contending with something that needs to be contended with. So what I would say is, if you need that idea to feel safe and happy and not depressed, you have some work to do that you should do for the sake of yourself to explore what the root of that is and contend with it so that it's no longer impacting your life in a detrimental way. And it is possible to do that, to contend with those things. It is possible and beneficial to do so. So if somebody's concept of the afterlife is what's keeping them from a depression, I would want to know what was causing that depression, and have that be contended with, have that be dealt with, have that be explored. So, because that is the problem. That's the problem.
Well, I guess it would just be a sense of, like, powerlessness in the universe, because, I mean, I'm completely irrelevant in the grand scheme of things. By all, like,
that makes you just like the rest of us. That makes you just like the rest of us. Why is it uncomfortable to think that you have the same power level as all the rest of us?
And also, what is
I want everyone to have more than what they have.
Well, what we want and what aren't the same thing. I would like for there to be no poverty and no hunger, but that's not the reality. It's a reality we might be able to work towards, but sitting around thinking it's real doesn't make it real. And what it does is it makes you not spend time trying to make it real.
Yeah, I'd like my immune system to stop eating my brain. That'd be cool.
Yeah.
But I can't make that happen. So I have to grapple with it. Right? I can't wrap a warm blanket around myself and not deal with it. I have to deal with it, right? So I'm dealing with it. So, like, I guess it sounds like you need to talk to a professional, but if your feeling is that because there is no afterlife, that makes you irrelevant, you should ask yourself some questions about how does an afterlife make you relevant? Why does that make you any more relevant, especially if your concept is everybody goes there regardless? You're a person here amongst many and will be a person there amongst many. So now you have to examine your idea of what it means to be relevant
Yeah,
and
it seems like
why it matters to you. Those are the important questions.
you're struggling with this frustration of not there were extraordinary stories and promises potentially told around the world, and you liked them, and then when you found out you didn't have any good reason to believe they were true, that made you sad. So you're opting to pretend, and I don't mean to accuse you of lying, I just can't think of a better word, pretend that you believe something you don't believe because it brings you comfort. And what Shannon just asked is the question that I've been wondering, which is, what about this brings you any comfort? The notion that you think there is, or probably is, some sort of afterlife that you don't know anything about, don't know what it's like, don't know how to get there. And there's no guarantee that it makes you any more special or gives you any more power, even if it were real. And yet, for some reason, you find this nebulous thing that you have no way to demonstrate as real, comforting on a particular issue that I don't see a connection with. I mean, it's almost as if you told me, hey, believing in an afterlife increases the number of dollars in my bank account. It's almost like you said that, because that's how absurd it feels to me. I don't understand how this increases dollars in your bank account, increases your power level, provides any comfort. It would, and I might be the weird one, it would absolutely destroy my sanity if I was sitting here engaged in levels of cognitive dissonance to be saying, oh, I'm really worried about this, so I'm going to pretend to believe this thing that I know I don't have good reason to believe, even though if it were true, it wouldn't fix the problem.
Well, that's definitely a lot to chew on. You make some very good points. I saw someone in the chat a little while ago say I believe in Pascal's placebo, which I thought was kind of funny.
It's kind of funny, actually. Pascal's placebo.
I like that.
Good job, whoever that was in chat. I like that.
You're
And
not hired, but I'll consider it.
Yeah, I don't want you to feel attacked, Olivia. And I know that sometimes these types of conversations can feel like that, especially because Matt and I both have a very way of communicating our ideas.
Right.
But ultimately, I'm concerned with people's well-being and their mental health. I'm very much invested in that. And when I hear you talking about this, what I hear through my lens of viewing the way these conversations work is there's some stuff that bothers me and I find it difficult to contend with. And that, like, it doesn't make me feel good. It gives me the to worry about that stuff. This is a way that I've found to feel better about it that seems to be somewhat working sometimes, or at least allows me to, avoid immediately contending with it every time it comes up, because it's a comforting counter thought. But it doesn't even sound like you fully explored why it's a comforting counter thought and critically analyzed what even your concept is of the afterlife, why it would exist, what it would look like. It's this, generic, ubiquitous, not well flushed out concept that is emotionally comforting when it comes to contending with some things that are worth contending with. And I would love for you to be able to contend with those things and work through to the other side of them. Because as somebody who's had to do it and done it, I'm glad I did. And I want more people to be able to do it because I feel better now. I'm not bogged down by constantly trying to figure out if I can contend with it, what it would look like to contend with it. I did the work and it is work and I'm the better for it. So I would want that for you too.
Could I ask one? Well, I know we've been going a long time here, but can I ask you one more quick question, Shannon?
Yeah, sure.
So Matt said something a little bit earlier that made a lot of sense to me, where he said that to him, my logic feels like I was saying that that believing in afterlife is similar to saying if I believe in afterlife, it is like that it puts more money in my bank account. Is that what you said, Matt? I don't want to misrepresent.
Yeah, something
you.
like that. That's yeah,
Okay.
it felt something like that.
Okay. Shannon, do you feel the same way about that?
I'm not
Is
sure
that kind of how you interpret what I say?
that believing in an afterlife is analogous to believing there's more money in your bank account, making you feel comfortable about financial stress. Is that what the analogy is?
No.
I just want to make sure I understand it.
No.
That I don't understand, so I can't answer because I don't fully grasp what's happening.
saying
I probably didn't explain it very well.
Saying that you believe there's an afterlife because it comforts you is like saying you believe in an afterlife because it actually increases the money in your bank account. There's no evidence of that happens, and there's no evidence that could possibly happen. And so when you tell me that that's your reason why, it's still, I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm grateful you took the prompt, you called in. I don't feel like I have a better understanding of how or why somebody can say, I believe something for which I recognize they don't have a good reason. But as we went through this, it was when you gave your reasons, even if we were to accept your reasons, there's nothing about your afterlife model that even under your description in any way should accomplish the goals that you're talking about. And yet that was your reason. And that's why, to me, it felt like you might as well be saying, you know, my bank account has more dollars in it when it doesn't.
I like that. Okay, now I understand it. And I also really like it because if you were able to convince yourself that that was the case, then it elucidates some of the other problems, which are if you really do believe that that is the case, you're going to make different decisions as a result of believing that's the case. And some of them will be detrimental to you because it's not, you have no way of knowing if it is. And if it's not, and you commit yourself to spending that money or making decisions based on the idea that that money is there, you're going to put yourself in debt. And you would have made different decisions, better decisions that were based in the foundations of reality that served you better and didn't put you in that, you know, dangerous and detrimental situation. So I like that analogy because I think it also elucidates those. So yeah, I would agree with Matt. Now that I get it. Sorry that I needed clarification.
So now Shannon is also correct.
Sorry.
I'm also correct. Now. It took me a minute. But I got there.
Please continue, Libby.
Sorry, we're assholes to each other, Libby. It's not you.
No problem. Okay, so with that established, I do want to clarify something. I guess I probably didn't explain this very well, and I think this is kind of where the disconnect is. I'm not looking at the afterlife as if it is something that's affecting me now. It's not that it's putting money in my bank account. It's that it's going to put money in my bank account after money has no value anymore and we're like in a post-money society, if that makes sense.
Okay.
Because it doesn't matter anymore.
Is it contingent on you believing that's going to happen?
No.
Then it's an absolutely useless position. You have a belief, and your acceptance or rejection of that belief is irrelevant to whether or not it will happen, and it is an untestable, unfalsifiable proposition that you have no reason to think could happen. So I don't know what value there is in believing something if the belief is irrelevant and there's no reason to think that the thing you're believing in is true. It's like saying, I believe in Bigfoot, but I have no way of exploring it, and it doesn't do me any good right now. And whether I believe in Bigfoot or not is irrelevant, because I know that when I die, Bigfoot is going to come dig me up and magically revive me in a forest somewhere in the middle of Alaska, or I believe that's what's going to happen. But
And then I can get
if
the
that
money out of my
belief,
bank account.
yeah, it is. I don't know what. First of all, I can't believe things unless I have good reason to think they're true. I don't ever believe things or try to never believe things merely because they are beneficial or feel good. But in this case, you're saying that your belief is irrelevant and you have no reason to think that it's true. And yet you still find some comfort in believing that it's true. How is that anything other than a perfect description of intentional self-deception?
Okay, that's a really good point. I guess it boils down to being true doesn't necessarily matter if I don't exist by the time it ends up being true.
But you exist now. Do you think that believing it now has no consequences?
What consequences would it have? I don't feel that it does.
So everything that you think is true is the result of some heuristic model in your head where you have reasoned your way to think that either this is true or it is beneficial to think this is true. Whatever that heuristic is that led you to that, if in fact the thing that you're believing is false, that means you have a heuristic in your brain that will lead you to false conclusions. And you may use that same model of thinking, that same process, to evaluate other claims as well. It's like saying, hey, I've got a calculator and I'm going to trust it, whether it gives me the right answer or not. And somebody's saying, I don't think that's the right answer. It's giving you answers for things where we shouldn't even be able to calculate. Yeah, but I'm going to trust it. And so you take that calculator and you go around and start doing your bills. That's going to have some consequences. You could wind up completely broke or incredibly wealthy, but you have no way of knowing which one. Why would you willingly use a broken tool?
Yeah. And there's also a reason why you're attached to the concept, right? Like, because I just heard you say, well, when I die, if it's true, then awesome. And if it's not true, I'll never know. So what does it really matter if I believe it or not? Well, you do believe it. Why? Why are you attached to the belief? Like, I think Matt and my brains maybe operate a little bit differently than some other people's, and I need to recognize that. Where I'm not capable of having a belief that just exists because it feels like a warm blanket. I I strive to, at least, or think I try to have beliefs that are based in tangible, provable things, and I am happy to sit in the discomfort of saying I don't know this, I don't understand it, maybe I'll never know. But you have yeah.
Sorry. The other little thing about this, you're asking what harm could it do? Well, let's imagine that there is an afterlife out there, but it's not the one you believe. How much time are you going to spend looking for the right one if you think you've already found it? In fact, your false belief could prevent you from finding the only true afterlife that's out there.
Yeah, that's a good point. Like, because it seems like a ubiquitous sort of generic afterlife that you believe in based on not necessarily reasons at all, but like, how do you know? Like, how do you know that exists? Did you explore all of the potential concepts of an afterlife? Like, what if you are striving for the wrong one?
I'm not betting on a specific one. I'm betting pretty explicitly on I don't know, and whatever's going to happen. Now I'm back to the why.
Why are you betting on that? Why do you need to bet? What's your collateral in this bet? Maybe it's something you need and should value and take care of instead of putting it up as collateral on this bet. Why are you betting?
Jesus is going to fuck you up.
I don't believe. I'm not Christian.
It doesn't matter. What if it's true? If Christianity is true, Jesus is going to fuck you up, and it's going to be because you rejected a belief in part because you accepted something else, or you were betting on something else.
Well, he would fuck me up anyway because I would never bet. I would never worship a god as evil as how Yahweh is portrayed.
Okay, that's really convenient that you're going to take the high ground while taking the low ground on sound epistemology.
Well, that's fair. I don't mean to be dishonest with that.
I don't even know if it's just lots of people are capable of. I mean, I believe stuff probably for all the wrong reasons because I didn't fully explore things. I kind of trusted others and authority figures, and then didn't really invest in exploring concepts and making my own epistemology because that's the system I was brought up in. And there's vestigial components of that when you deconvert, and one of them is trying to figure out how you form beliefs. And sometimes we form beliefs not for good reasons, and then they stick with us for comforting reasons. And it sounds like you're talking to us right now, so you're willing to explore it. My primary concern is that it's a coping mechanism to address something. It sounds like I'm more and more convinced of that as we're calling, and I don't want something that you should deal with to be the best version of yourself to be collateral in a bet that you will never know if you win.
Yeah, my thing is that I care about what's true, and I think it is fair to call it dishonest. I just don't view it as if you're like being a bad person or intentionally lying. You are acknowledging that you care more about what your personal preference for an afterlife is than what actual afterlife might exist. Oh, I won't worship that because that's a monster. Well, that's completely independent from whether or not that monster is real and whether or not there is some potential afterlife there. Oh, I don't want that kind of afterlife. Well, the kind of afterlife you want is irrelevant to the kind of afterlife you are or aren't going to get. And to me, it's just all I care about is it true? Is there something I can do about it? I don't give a fuck what sort of afterlife I would prefer or you would prefer or anybody else would prefer. To me, it's all sophistry and a waste of time. It is. And that's why I guess I'm confused as to what do you get out of inventing the thing that you'd prefer and acting as if you have and well, you're not even acting as if you have some reason to believe it. You're believing it while acknowledging you don't have a reason to believe it, and that you also don't care whether it's true.
Well, the more that this is such a fascinating talk because, like, I forget which of you mentioned it before about how I have one of you said you don't think I've thought too deeply about this before, and honestly, you're probably right. And you've given me a whole lot to chew on here. Shannon said something before that I think is relevant to what you just asked, Matt, where she asked me why does it have to be a bet and what is my collateral on betting? And I guess in my mind, the answer is I don't have to. It is almost nothing. And in my mind, I'm not betting anything. And there's a potential win. So I guess the Pascal placebo thing is more accurate.
But it's not a potential win. You think everybody's going to win, and so you're not betting anything on something that everybody's going to win.
I guess
you're betting on the truth of it.
I would need to know what kind of like tangible issues it would bring me to keep this belief, because so far I've been pretty unconvinced by both of these things.
How strange that you're wanting to know what tangible benefits it would give you or cost you. I don't know which one to keep this belief. Why are you okay having beliefs to begin with that you acknowledge don't have good justification? Why is that okay?
I mean, I guess that would basically go into solipsism, but my thought process is it's just not something I'm able to comprehend at the moment.
Why do you want it to be true? Why do you feel attached to it? I think that's the answer. There's a reason that you want or need or feel that it's better for it to be true, which means that there's something that would be difficult to contend with or is uncomfortable to deal with for you if it's false. And I think the detrimental thing is not actually contending with that, avoiding contending with that. Because what if it is false? Let's Pascal's reality instead of Pascal's placebo. What if it is false and you never contend with whatever that is? You never grapple with it. You never operate within reality and see what contending with that means. And you just go to the end and then there's nothing after. And you never address that, even though it could have made things tangibly better for you in the now to not avoid dealing with that. Why not just deal with that?
And I completely see where you're coming from, but I guess the part that isn't making sense to me is like when Matt talked earlier about the idea of having a broken calculator. I don't see how it's broken because I don't see any of the problems so far that would cause it.
You don't see how believing something that is potentially false and you have no way of verifying whether or not it's false means that your calculator that led to that answer that you have no way of verifying is true or false. You don't see how that's a problem?
Yeah, you're admitting that you have a belief that you haven't
to demonstrate that it's not working, right?
No. Now you're
admitting that you have a belief that you've not explored and demonstrated to be true. That you're admitting that you believe something and you have absolutely no idea if it's true.
You're basically saying I'm going to keep using
that you should.
You're going to keep. You're saying you're going to keep using your calculator until somebody proves it's broken when you have no reason to think it worked right in the first place. It's never. You're not even checking the answers to see if those answers are true. You're just writing them down. You are engaged in a futile waste of time exercise that has no tie to the truth, and you don't see that that's a problem. I do.
Yeah, I agree with that. That's what I'm trying to say. Is like if I was arguing ardently right now that there is a purple dinosaur with bird wings in the next room that no one can see, but I like the idea that it's there. It makes me feel better to know that it's there. And I mean, well, no one will ever know because every time you open the door, it disappears. Every time you open the door, it disappears, but it's there. I know that it's there. I like feeling like it's there. You would, that would sound weird, right? Because it should, because I'm manifesting it. It'll never be proven right or wrong. And I'm admitting that I just believe it because it's comforting. So that's not a great way to form beliefs, right? Shouldn't I figure
see why it would be a problem for you to have your imaginary dinosaur?
Because it tells you a lot about how I form beliefs, especially if I'm willing to go on a public platform and argue for it, right? That's like saying it. I don't care if I believe things that are true. It's important to me that I get to keep being comforted, even though it may or may not be true, and I have no way of proving if it is. And I could argue, like, if we could get into the weeds, I know we've been talking for a long time about why a soul isn't even possible. Like, I could do a PowerPoint presentation about how your neurons work and all of the problems with all of the different concepts of the soul. And it doesn't even sound like you've explored that either, which is a necessary precondition for there to be an afterlife, is that there has to be a non-corporeal form of you. And I don't believe that that's possible from first principles. So, like, why do you want to believe things that you can't demonstrate and people have demonstrated, I think quite well aren't viable? Why do you want to believe them? Why are you arguing? Like, you have the right to believe it. Are you arguing? Do you want us to tell you that it's cool? Because we don't think it is, I guess. That you recognize something.
I don't expect you to care.
I do care.
Oh, we do care because we have to share a fucking planet with people who've decided that they don't give a shit about the truth. They're going to believe what they want to believe because it's comfortable. No, and they're going to keep doing it, forcing other people to not only do the hard work of finding the truth, but do the hard work of showing how this belief is actually harmful. If your tool is broken, your measurement is unreliable, period. It may be correct. It may not be correct. If you don't care to demonstrate whether or not it's correct or not, I cannot
Yeah.
This is the most frustrating thing to be in this world right now where we have more access to more information than ever, and where it is becoming increasingly difficult to tell the difference between true claims and false claims, and to run across people who don't give a fuck about the truth and want to push the burden onto everybody else to show how they're fucking up, instead of figuring out, hey, how do I make sure I'm using the right tools to evaluate things? It matters. You're having consequences on my life right now.
And your own too. And like, I care about you as a person because you're a person, and I care about people. And if you have an epistemological mental framework and schema that operates in such a way that you just hold on, like you just white knuckle beliefs that you have no way of demonstrating, that permeates your thought process and how you engage with your life and how you engage with others. Speaking towards, what Matt said, it's as though there are facts that you can operate under, but you like the alternative facts. We'll take this path instead, even though it's not verifiable because it's more comfortable, and that's a
Fake news.
problem. Yeah, right.
You
I don't want
are
my brain to be
sucking up
fake news.
like a vacuum and just going, I'll just go with it until somebody shows me there's a problem. Well, everybody's not here to do your homework for you.
Well, I'm sorry that I'm sorry about the turn that this call has really taken.
It took a turn. This is.
I'm not sure.
I tell you what,
Olivia. I tell you what, really hard to be honest and vulnerable here.
Olivia. We're going to let you go now. We've been talking for 55 minutes, and we've been here incredibly patient. We've been answering stuff. We've been pointing out things. And at the end of it now, you're going to be, this is taking a turn, because you're flat out saying, hey, I don't care if it's true. Hey, until somebody shows me that it's causing a problem, I'm going to keep going with it. And we've tried to point out what the actual problem is with that. And you are unwilling to consider that and just want somebody else to do the work for you. And then when we point out the brute fact of that, now the call is taking a turn. Okay, let's all pause rather than getting in a fight. And you go off and think about the tons of things you can rewind that Shannon and I said. And if you come up with this decision that you actually care about whether or not things are true, and you actually understand that running around believing whatever you want just until somebody shows you there's a problem is a bad idea, or if you come up with a good idea for what you believe, call us back.
Okay. Thank you for your time.
Thanks, Olivia. I hope she finds her way to caring about whether or not she believes things that are true. It's hard. Like if you say, I don't actually care if my beliefs are true, so long as they're not harming anybody. I don't even think that's true. Like not believing things that I would argue are verifiably false, but definitely believing things that you have no idea if they are true, and holding on to that, having that orientation towards belief. That's scary to me, because that leads to a lot of negative outcomes, both for the individual. Like, if you can't care about others, not saying Olivia doesn't care about others, but at the very least, you should care enough about yourself to put in the investment to do the work to be the best version of yourself. So I hope she does that. Analyzes why it's so important to her to not care if things are true. Why? There's a why there. Figure it out.
I think that everybody does care about whether or not things are true. It's just that when it's not obvious or convenient, when it's actually going to require a little bit of work, until somebody shows them why they should do that work, we're just fucking lazy. And, this doesn't appear to be causing a problem. I don't see a problem. Why would it matter? Why can't I just run around believing whatever I want willy-nilly? In that sense, they don't care about the truth. But here's the thing. If you're getting ready to cross the street, you care about whether or not your sensory data is reliable, whether or not there are cars coming. You are unlikely, if there's traffic, to willingly close your eyes and trust some unreliable epistemology and walk across that busy highway. That's because there's an obvious risk there. I don't understand why people would close their eyes and venture out into other areas just because there isn't an obvious risk. Why would you use the least reliable method of understanding reality just because you don't see an immediate problem? I'm pretty sure that people have lost fingers and limbs in their lives by not realizing the potential risk of something.
Yeah.
Isn't it wiser to look at the potential risk? But it's also, you kept asking, why do you want to believe this? And I can appreciate that.
I think it's important.
But also, I'm not convinced that they do believe it. So there is the belief, I believe X, and then there is a belief about belief. I believe there's value in me believing X. And so you can believe the second one, which almost feels like you believe the first one, even if you don't believe the first one.
I think like it. Sorry.
That belief in belief, coming from Dennett and everything else. I think people confuse that because it's not like Olivia believes there is an afterlife. Olivia just believes that believing an afterlife makes Olivia feel good. Well, congrats.
It's not even that it makes her feel good, I don't think. It's like trying to cover a hole in the wall with paint, right? It's not effectively working, but maybe it makes you feel good for a minute and you could just keep painting more. It's not covering the hole in the wall. Olivia's got some holes in her wall and she's trying to cover them in paint because she kept saying, out of her mouth, she kept saying, it's not that it makes her feel better if it is true. It's that she's afraid of dealing with what she needs to deal with if it isn't.
That's fair.
So that tells me from a psychological perspective that there are things she needs to deal with. And instead of dealing with them, she's arguing that she shouldn't have to because it doesn't hurt her to just hold this belief she can't verify that allows her to avoid dealing with them. And I think that's bad for her and everybody else. And I don't like that epistemology. So that's my perspective. I agree with you, but that's why I was asking about the why, because what I was hearing in the conversation is there's something at the root of this that needs dealing with. And I would prefer that she have the opportunity to do that and just be a better version of herself. That'd be better for her. And ultimately, if everybody did that, it would be better for society.
Hi, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed that, or if you think you have better arguments for the supernatural or God, the Sunday show is live at 2 p.m. and 7 p.m. every Sunday on The Line. Links below.